Good morning and welcome to the Healthy Living Blueprint 2.0, where we are discussing how to prevent, treat, and potentially reverse chronic and autoimmune disease naturally. Today, we are once again joined by Dr. Jonathan Fields. Dr. Fields is four times nationally board certified in herbal medicine, acupuncture, biomedicine, and the foundations of Eastern medicine. He holds a doctorate and master's in acupuncture and oriental medicine, as well as a bachelor's in health sciences. In addition, he has numerous certifications in functional medicine, injections, IV therapy, stem cells, and martial arts. Over the last 20 years, his training has taken him all over the world and allowed him to incorporate a wide range of healing modalities. Currently, he runs a successful multi-location integrative medicine practice in South Florida, where he specializes in sports medicine, women's health, autoimmunity, and digestive health. Dr. Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the show once again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the wonderful intro. Now I feel like I have to live up to the hype.
There's no doubt that you will. And one of the reasons I particularly love having you on the show, because when I am at my house in South Florida, you are my personal doctor. So I've had firsthand experience on the wonders that you are able to do through your work. And I just love I feel so blessed to, on my own health journey, have such a great team of practitioners such as yourself to help me.
Well, I'm always happy to help. That's what we do, as you know, and it's an honor to be here with you as well. And I love everything that you're doing. And I think this is very important work, being able to share this kind of information with people and let people know that there are treatment options other than what the standard conventional medicine may offer, and let them know to never give up, keep looking. And I think the work you're doing is equally important and viable, and people need help with the nutrition coaching and all the testing that you just told me they're going to be doing, and all that kind of stuff that goes above and beyond what you're going to get from most doctors. So it's fantastic that we can collaborate and work together and help each other out personally and professionally.
Definitely. Well said. And it's just such important work. And like you said, we want to give people options and hope. And that's what this whole show is about. Like, what are your options? What natural treatments can you look at? Because they are effective. You don't just have one option. You don't just need to go the old route of conventional medicine, popping some pills, all that kind of thing. There's a time and a place for everything, but it's empowering when you know what your options are and go full steam ahead at pursuing a different way of healing.
Yeah, correct. And now that we have the media and internet, it's kind of hard for people to hide or try to brush this kind of medicine that's been around for thousands of years, or even in the functional side of field more recently, under the rug, because we can get the message out there and we can let people know that you do have options. And if the conventional thing isn't working for you, nothing against the conventional system, but it doesn't work for many people, as you know, or it kind of focuses more on treating symptoms rather than getting the root causes. And that's where we come in and can help patients learn about why they're having these problems rather than just drugging them in oblivion if it's not working.
Exactly. That's the key. Just asking why until we really get down to the root. So when we're talking about now some alternative or different options for people to look into, one of the things I wanted to highlight with you today is the use of herbal medicine in treating different conditions. And I would love you to share a little bit more, because I know you have a lot of experience and background in herbal medicine. And what I've found is that people often feel it's sort of like doesn't really work, it's a bit wishy-washy when I'm, do I drink teas and tinctures and this kind of thing? Like, it sounds a bit odd. Is it actually worth it? Does it work? So that's what I would love to jump in with you today and just give us a bit of a background around herbal medications for illness.
It's a great question, and you are correct. Those are some of the common concerns. People are worried about, one, whether it works, and two, is it safe? Usually those are kind of like the most important things. So we'll start off with, does it work? The answer is astoundingly yes, it does work, and it has worked for thousands of years. We have thousands of years of documentation, as well as some pretty large scale clinical trials in certain herbs. If you look at even just basically like turmeric, right, or curcumin, one of the probably the most well-studied herb, or things like ashwagandha or stuff like that. There's a lot of research. You can go on PubMed. You can spend the rest of your life reading articles about just those two herbs, right? Out of
I
all the
actually
different
got
herbs.
turmeric here in this is my
Well, there you
anti-inflammatory
go. So
turmeric
you're
supplement
reaping the
right there.
rewards and the benefits.
Mm.
Now, when you mentioned teas, right? So if we make a strong herbal tea, yes, it can work. If you're getting the tea from the grocery store in a little tea bag when it says turmeric or ginger tea in it, is that a medicinal dose of herbs? No, it's not. Will it taste good? May it have some health benefits? Maybe, but is that going to help you reverse any serious diseases or anything? No, absolutely not. You need to make sure you have the right dosage, the right proper preparation, and exactly what you need, not just random stuff. You have to look at herbal medicine like a prescription from a doctor, and it is. And I'm board certified in herbs. My master's and my doctorate was in Eastern medicine, like we had discussed. So herbology is one of my main fields. So it's a lot different than, oh, I heard this was good for me and I tried it and it didn't work. As
Yes.
far as concentrations, that makes a big difference as well. And as far as efficacy, it's very easy to say, oh, it doesn't work. And I've had people tell me that. I had pharmaceutical reps try to tell me, oh, herbs don't work. I said, well, okay, the drugs that you're selling,
Mm.
what are they based on? Where did those ingredients or where did the concentrate come from? Right? All comes from herbs. If you look at aspirin, it comes from white willow. If you look at digioxin, which is a cardiovascular heart drug, right, that comes from foxglove root, Shu
Wow.
Wong. So we have literally 2,000 years of case studies and data on a lot of these herbs and strategies of how to use them. And we're still using those same strategies very effectively. And I've been able to reverse autoimmune diseases and chronic conditions that conventional medicine has many times failed. And I've had people come in and they're on infusions and medications and they're not working at all. They're getting side effects from the medications and their condition is continuing to progress and get worse.
Mhm.
And sometimes just herbal medicine alone might completely reverse that and heal a person back to 100% or at least put a stop on their symptoms. So, the outcomes obviously vary from person to person and condition to condition, but there is no doubt at all that it is very effective, at least as effective as conventional drugs and
Mm.
pharmaceuticals.
And without the dreaded side effects, right, on harmful effects on your other organs when you are using a herbal medicine as opposed to a pharmaceutical. It's, as you said, just as effective, and it doesn't have those awful side effects that we would need to be worried about, or damage, should I say, damaging side effects.
So for the most part, yes, herbs are infinitely safer than pharmaceuticals, right? There are very few to close to none known injuries from herbs. Now there are herbs that have toxicity, and that's normal, just as
Mm.
drugs. So here's what you say: how many Americans do you think die a year from herbs? You probably can't even find a number because it is minimal, if any, right? Do you know how many Americans die every year from NSAIDs like Advil and Tylenol? About 7,000. On
Wow.
top of the hundreds of thousands that get hospitalized with overdosages from that kind of stuff, on
Yes.
top of all the gastric bleeding that you're causing and the liver damage and other side effects. So, have there been injuries from herbs? Yes, of course, but
Mm.
it is minuscule, a fraction of 1% compared to pharmaceuticals. I mean, we know that the medical errors, mostly wrong prescriptions or overdosages or the wrong medication being administered, is responsible for being one of the leading causes of death in the United States. So, do we have that kind of safety profile or track record with herbs? No, there's very little damage. In fact, I actually had a piece published in a medical journal comparing this kind of things because every once in a while, the industry or you'll find a medical journal that writes these propaganda pieces about herbal medicine and things like
Mm.
that, trying to bash it and trying to scare people away and deter it. I think personally, because of the money involved and the money being lost to pharmaceuticals, if the
Yes.
things are effective, and they may argue that it's a safety thing, but for instance, there was a piece published in the Lancet a couple of years ago that I wrote a response to, and they claim that herbs are incredibly dangerous and they could be killing all these people. And then so I looked into the research and I go look at the studies, and they're saying, oh, well, there was a study and these people got kidney failure. And this is a recent article from a couple of years ago. they pointed to a study that was done in the 90s, and it was 9 people got some kidney damage, and all of them lived. And something like, so that's the best. You're writing these articles and you're publishing them in medical journals to try to deter people from taking herbs, and you're talking about 9 people that all lived and were fine from 20, 30 years ago. That's the best example you can get, right? And there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands dying every year from pharmaceuticals. So there's, if you could find some proof of herbs being more dangerous, please do. But that is why it's extra important to work with a qualified practitioner or licensed herbalist or a doctor that knows what they're doing, rather than just, oh, I heard this was good from you and I bought it on the internet and maybe I cooked it up wrong. Is there the potential for damage? Yes, of course, but infinitely safer than any sort of pharmaceutical product and as effective for certain conditions. Now, what we do nowadays is we don't really do emergency medicine, right? It's more chronic care, and we might do acute cases for colds and flus and things of that nature. But yeah, if somebody's bleeding out or has a serious accident, I usually tell them get stabilized first through conventional medicine. When you're a little more stable, we'll help you work on the root cause of it. We'll make sure it doesn't come. But yeah, I've had calls from people and they're profusely bleeding and they're coming to you and I'm like, no. Urgent care first, get that handled, and then I'll help you deal with it and help make sure it doesn't happen again. So, in ancient times, there was no difference. There was no hospital. You went to the same doctor and they had to work with you in herbal medicine, and they had to use much higher dosages maybe and get a little more experimental because you were their last resort. Now, luckily, we're kind of in the middle. We deal with some very serious conditions and we treat people for cancer and all these different things, usually complementary. It's more complementary, like they're doing conventional treatments and we're working with them as well. I would never discourage a patient from not seeking conventional medicine, but we work together with their doctors, and that's why it's an integrative practice, because we combine the Western medicine with the Eastern medicine and the functional medicine. And we always do what's best for the patient based on all the knowledge and all the tools and all the options that we have, rather than I was only trained in this and this is the only thing that's known to work or whatever.
Beautiful. And that really is the beauty of that integrative approach, is that the focus is doing what's best for the patient. It's not I'm just focusing on Eastern or I'm just focusing on Western conventional. What is best for you? And let's work together to see how we can bring both worlds to help you overcome what you're dealing with or to optimize your health in any way needed.
Right. And address all the body systems, not just, well, you have this disease or this symptom. We're going to, throw everything. The Western medicine, we call it like the shotgun approach. We're going to hit it as hard as we can with the highest dosage of whatever we know that might work for this, see what happens. It's not always best for the patient because you will get some side effects. But if you do get side effects from herbs, the most common ones are very simple stuff like maybe upset stomach or, basically like that, like, maybe you'll get an occasional skin reaction, but it is so rare. I think I've had I've seen more reactions from B12 than I have from herbs. To be honest with you. I think in my years of practice, I've had maybe 2 or 3 cases where somebody got like a bad stomach ache and it lasted a day or 2 and then they were fine. And you're not having these serious things, like people's kidney failure or liver failure or liver scarring. And once again, is it possible if you give somebody the wrong dosage of an herb that's toxic? Yes, but typically we make the formulas. We don't use a lot of single herbs in Eastern medicine. We'll usually make a formula. So there's a little bit of different herbs that work synergistically rather than doing a very high dose, which is more the conventional style with the Western allopathic medicine of one ingredient. You're more likely to have a side effect when you're amplifying these compounds into a pharmaceutical, or you're doing very high dosages of any one herb, rather than using a combination of herbs in a preparation that's been used for 2,000 years and is very well documented on a safety profile.
I love that. Combination really is key, making those blends. It's not just one herb that's going to miraculously fix your problem, but really working with someone like yourself who knows what effective combinations are used to treat certain conditions. But when you talk about these blends, do you have Is there a specific way people should look at taking herbal medicine, whether it's in the form of a tea or a tincture, or maybe like a powdered blend or a capsule? Like, you know, what way is most effective, or are there multiple ways that people can look at?
That is a fantastic question, and that also varies from patient to patient quite greatly. Personally, I think the original old school way of making a tea from raw herbs is probably the most effective. It's
Okay.
also the most time consuming and maybe the most expensive. So a lot of patients don't go for it. I mean, most patients, if I tell them, hey, you got to cook this up, it's going to stink up your house. It's going to take you 45 minutes to do, and you're going to do that once a day. My compliance is going to be near none. Do
Yeah.
I have patients who do it? Yes. Are there practices that do solely just that and specialize in that? Yes, I'm sure. I mean, if you can see behind me, I actually got some raw herbs over here on the shelf. Maybe I'll pull a couple out later and show you a few. But I think it's, in the society and the culture that we have today, people want convenience. So raw herbs are rarely used, at least in my practice. I do know I have some of my professors and friends that practice almost exclusively in that, or mostly in that. The second best way, I think, is granules, which is like a concentrated tea. They boil the herbs down, or they have a processing plants that basically boil it down like into grains, or like little it's almost like sand, right? And then we can mix the different herbs and different herbal formulas like that. So I might have 3 or 4 containers, and each one has 12 different herbs in it. It's a formula, and it's already made in a powder. And then the patient only needs to take like a teaspoon or two, and
Yes.
all they got to do is mix it in some hot water. And as soon as it cools down, drink it. So that's very easy. It only takes a couple minutes to prepare. Now, some patients have a problem with that too, right? Because you have the patients that are like, ew, it smells funny, it tastes funny, I don't like it, I'm not going to do it. Or they think they're going to do it, and then they do it for a few days, and then like, I can't take it anymore. Depending on the condition we're treating and what it is, the formula may be sweet, it might be incredibly bitter, it might be sour. So that's not a viable option for everybody either. It is more effective, and part of the medicine is actually the flavor. So I believe some of that is lost when you're doing capsules or tinctures or things like that. However, they are still effective. If they can't do the tea, usually we'll go to, and the teas are great, especially the teas from concentrate, the extract powders, because we can still custom mix things specifically for a patient, and it's a lot faster than doing the raw herbs. If I got to separate 2 weeks of raw herbs for you and pick out 12 different herbs, it could take all day.
Yeah.
Where when we go to the extract powders, we just have these different containers, and we can mix and match different formulas together. If I think your issue is 40% this and 60% this, and or whatever, 10% this and 20% that, I can put in specific herbs or formulas, or use a formula and then maybe add 1 or 2 single herbs into that formula to address your exact pattern or differential diagnosis that I come up with, based on what I think that you have going on. So it's very convenient. If you can't do that, the next best thing is patent formulas, meaning it's probably a very well-known formula. Maybe it's been around for 1800 years or 500 years, but they're already pre-made into capsules. And these are general Eastern medicine formulas that are basically used around the world. And there might be 5 or 6 different brands that make the same exact formula. So they have options like that. The only problem with that is they do work, but they will require a bunch of pills, right? Because, I mean, you might have to take 6 a day or 8 a day or 12 a day, or sometimes maybe it's only 1 or 2 a day. But to get that dosage that you could out of the tea, you could just pick a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons. It will require more pills multiple times throughout the day. The thing we don't like about that sometimes, and usually that works, it is still very effective for patients. If I can nail down, you have this pattern, and I think this is what you need, is going to work. However, sometimes people come in with multiple patterns. They might have this going on, and then something else going on, and something with their digestive, and something with the mind. Maybe they're not sleeping. Sometimes it's all related, and one formula will do it, and sometimes it will not. So the setback with the capsules and the pills is you can't really mix and match them, right?
Yeah.
So what you can do is you could have the patient take more formulas. But then if I got to give you 4 or 5 different bottles of pills, it would have been easier to just do the tea.
Yeah.
Usually I won't do that. Usually I'll start people off with like, just 1 or 2 formulas if they are doing caps. And most of the times it's very effective. And once again, that's a thing that varies from patient to patient. Tinctures work as well. I don't have as much experience with tinctures personally. I use them for some patients. We have the patients that are like, I can't swallow pills, or
Yeah.
maybe it's children, so, or I'm already taking 400 pills a day, whatever it is. So sometimes we use the tinctures. I've used a few of them with some of the patients, but it's not my specialty. They are very effective. They're usually distilled in either like an alcohol solution or a vegetable glycerin or something like that, depending on who makes them and why and how they're manufacturing them. You will get results. And then you have the tea pills, which are the little black looking BBs. I think that is the least effective format. They still do work, but usually they're super tiny and you got to pop like 8 or 12 of them at a time, depending on the brand and the efficacy. So there are lots of options. There's something for everybody. There's definitely, whether you want to do the tea or the raw herbs, or if capsules are just more convenient for you, we can find a way to help you with the herbal medicine. There's a method of administration that will work for 99%, I think, of patients.
I think I've personally had the biggest benefit from tea and that powdered tea that you mentioned. I've also used tinctures. I do like them. It just depends what I can find. Like where I am right now, certain herbs that are cat's claw, the stuff that I'm taking right now, I haven't been able to find the sort of raw herbs, but I have been able to find it in tincture form. So I've been taking it that way. But wherever possible, I agree with you. I definitely prefer the sort of the tea form. And if anybody watching doubts the effectiveness of tea, thinking just having a little bit of tea, how can that really help? Like take one serving of a smooth move tea, and then you will see how massively effective a bag of tea or a blend of tea can actually be, because you might not think, what is it really doing to my body? This delicious.
Just have a plunger ready.
Yeah, have a plunger ready. I think that's when I learned many years ago the effectiveness of tea. It's not just something that tastes yummy, but it really does stimulate your body in different ways. It's effective. So I absolutely love teas, and it's such a great way to keep your hydration as well. And it's just an easy way to get, if you are getting the right herbs and things, if you're not cooking it in the kitchen and everything, it's just an easy way to get your medication in every day.
Yeah, and once again, it is much safer than the pharmaceuticals, and it's worked for thousands of years. And we do have mountains of published research showing the efficacy for these types of things. Now, people will argue sometimes, oh, well, you don't have the mechanism of action for each ingredient or each basically, you don't have a method of action for each constituent or within each individual herb, and you're mixing all these herbs. How can you possibly track it? Look, it doesn't matter. What matters is the patients are getting better.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still doing ongoing research. Do we have double-blind clinical randomized trials for every single herb and every single combination of herbs? No, but we do have those studies being done on formulas, and we know, and on individual herbs in some cases, and the science proves that they work. So there is plenty of high quality research out there if you take the time to actually look for it. And anybody says that there isn't is not well informed and hasn't done the research. They're picking up on maybe one or two propaganda pieces or things that were published and maybe not reviewed to the full extent. You can cherry pick scientific information and make anything sound true. And I think, this is a big problem with bias in scientific research, whether when it comes to pharmaceuticals or this kind of medicine. Everybody always kind of has their agenda that they want to push, and things do slip by, and scientific articles are retracted all the time, as we've seen in the cases in the last few years as well. They came out with some pretty big studies that ended up having to be retracted. And we know with the pharmaceutical companies, a lot of times, right, drugs are, the research is published, drugs are pushed to the FDA, and then a year or two later, it comes out and turns out, hey, they were lying the whole time and bribing doctors and falsifying research. So that kind of stuff does happen in the scientific community as well as in the alternative medicine community. So it's one of those things, humans will be humans, and there's a margin of error with everything. That being said, there is plenty of clinical research to prove it works. There's plenty of testimonies from patients, and we have, in this case, we literally have case studies from 1500 years ago or longer that where they're talking about specific cases, and that's things that you would present today still, which can still be published.
Oh, great point. And that's why it's so important for when you are doing your research to look where the source is, look what the source of that research, of that article is, because that's going to make a big difference. I remember having a conversation about a year ago with somebody about Monsanto and Roundup and all that kind of thing. And he pulled up an article. He's like, look, but this article says Roundup probably doesn't cause cancer. I'm like, well, first of all, the whole headline says probably, and look at who the source is. It was like Agri USA or something like that. I'm like, of course they're going to say it doesn't. You need to look at the source of your research. Where is it coming from?
Yeah, and that's a big part of it. And you don't know what to trust with the sources, whether it be pharmaceutical research or herbal research. And sometimes you really can't make it out. And in that specific case is, yeah, maybe they don't have concrete evidence, but how come they've already paid out $11 billion in claims? And why have they set aside another $3-4 billion in claims that they know are coming in?
Exactly.
So just because you can't prove it doesn't mean it's not real and it's not happening, which is the same case for the herbal medicine. You might not, or acupuncture or some of these other things, you might not be able to prove why it's working to the level of detail or accuracy that most people within the scientific community might want. That, however, does not prove that it is not working. Right? So
sure.
you got to be able to separate between those two things. Just because something hasn't been FDA cleared or hasn't been proven to that level on large scale clinical trials, sometimes that's just because nobody's had $1 billion to invest to study one herb. It doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means we need to conduct more research. And who's going to fund that research, right? I can't invest $1 billion to go study some single herb, right? And the pharmaceutical companies are certainly not going to do it because you can't patent an herb like that. You know, you would need to concentrate it and make it into a drug and then sell it for insane amounts of money as well.
Definitely. I think it really just comes down to getting curious about healing and looking at all your options and really listening to your body, like see for yourself what's working for you, and look at what your beliefs are as well and your values and which method aligns with you more with what you want to do. And yeah, just listening to your body and seeing what's working.
That's an excellent point, and that is one of the biggest problems I think that people have with blind faith in the current medical system. And I have patients that come in on a regular basis and tell me that their doctors are arguing with them over known side effects of medications. They say, oh, it's definitely not that. And I'm like, well, if you look it up, there's a warning from the FDA saying that's a known side effect, but your doctor's telling you it's not the side effect, even though you didn't start experiencing it until immediately after you started taking the medication. So, but a lot of times people, you're correct, are not listening to their body and they might be missing those types of signs. And it's the same thing with the herbal medicine. And with the herbal medicine, here's one of the other caveats. It can take a little bit longer to work. It's not a pharmaceutical. It's not like you're going to pop a pill in the morning and your blood pressure just dropped 40 points. It takes time for this stuff to work, right? And some medications are like that too, but some medications like we'd expect with the Tylenol or aspirin or whatever NSAIDs to, you know, give us some kind of effect in 20 minutes. So that is true. The herbs don't work on that kind of time frame, and you do need to slowly pay attention. And what we were talking about before, the conversation, mindset, and kind of shifting and awareness of your body and what's going on. Because sometimes patients are getting better and they don't even realize it because they're so stuck in this story of, oh, I've had this condition for so long, and they're not 100% healed within a week or two. But I'll actually have to go through patients and repeat all their symptoms back to them every session. And then sometimes I'll be 2-3 weeks out and they come in, I'm like, how you doing? And they're like, terrible. And then I start asking them, do you still have night sweats? No. Are you sleeping better? Oh yeah, I'm sleeping great now. Does your stomach still hurt? Yeah, a little bit, but it's much better. I'm like, okay, well, so it's working. You're getting better, right? So part of that is the awareness of your body and what's happening. And sometimes it takes an outside source or a third party to kind of help you realize that. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I mean, that's why with my clients, we track symptoms every week, or we meet every week. So we track symptoms every week because if I asked you, how was your sleep last week, Tuesday, on a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever, you're not going to be able to tell me. But when we're tracking it, and it's exactly like you say, sometimes we measure results by certain factors, like how much weight I've lost, or maybe how much has my skin cleared up. That's our measurement of success. And we don't look at, well, has my bowels improved? Or, you know, my energy, my sleep, all that kind of thing, maybe my mental focus, whatever it is. And when you are tracking it weekly, you are able to see like the non-scale wins and the non-obvious wins for yourself, and just putting that onto paper. And I find as well is that often with like autoimmune conditions or chronic conditions, when we are ill, it might feel like it's come about all of a sudden, but internally there's been a lot of dis-ease going on and imbalance for many, many years before outward symptoms start to arise. And people need to understand it's the same thing with herbal medication, that even though it could be working internally to fix imbalances, it may take a bit of time for you to feel those outward symptoms, but it doesn't mean it's not working. It's working at a cellular level internally, and we just get to be patient until we start to feel those effects. And because it's these small increases over time, we maybe don't feel it, because it's not like you have a 1 energy and you take a bit of herbals and the next thing you've got a 10 energy. You know, it might be increasing by 0.5% or 0.5 point every single day. So those small changes, as you mentioned, it's difficult to then realize the improvement, but you are continuously getting better.
And that's 2 great points you brought up. One is you have to quantify. So when you're working with the patients, you got to tell them, well, last week your level of pain was a 10, right? Or a 7, and today it's a 5. And so we usually ask that the intensity of the symptoms, the frequency. Was it before you were having a hot flash every hour, or you had a headache 5 days a week, and now your hot flashes are once a day and you only had 1 headache this entire week? And patients are often not used to thinking in that mindset, because they're just like, oh, well, I still had a headache, so I still have the problem. So tracking it is very important. And I'm glad to hear that you have that in your worksheets and things that you're kind of working with the patients. The other thing that you brought up, I think we can boil down to chronic inflammation, right? So if you are chronically inflamed, or you have, whether it be adrenal fatigue or whatever it is, yes, that is a very long-term process. And the same with medications or dietary changes or exercise. It can take months sometimes to bring about these changes, right? I mean, every 4 months, all the red blood cells in our bodies die and they kind of remake themselves. So essentially you have all new cells to some extent every 4 months, right? At least as far as the red blood cells. So it can take that time, or sometimes even longer, to get the full effect. You might have some effects in a week or 2, but that might not be enough. It might take you 6 months. It might take you 3 months. It might take you a year. And that varies from patient to patient, depending on many different factors. Not only, you would think, like the age of the patient. Obviously, a young, healthy person is going to get quicker, a lot better, or heal a lot faster than somebody who perhaps is 85 years old and has been dealing with these conditions and is on 14 different medications, which is quite common, or more. Sometimes I have patients come in, right, and they're taking 20 different meds, and all the symptoms are getting worse and worse, and they're having side effects, and half the meds are just for side effects of the other side effects that they're getting from the other meds. It's pretty insane. But to some extent, sometimes they are keeping the patient alive and healthy too. So we have to work with them and kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. But it's very common, you know, depending on the person, the state of health, and their compliance. If I'm telling you, listen, please don't eat ice cream every night, and you're going to keep doing it, and then you come back to me, the herbs aren't working, well, you're self-sabotaging, right? Because I told you, listen, the cause of your maybe hyperglycemia causing your neuropathy is, your glucose being out of control, which is going to cause nerve cell death. And we're giving you maybe B vitamins and herbs to help with circulation and help regenerate new healthy cells. But if you're killing them faster than we're regenerating them, you're not helping yourself, right? You're actually working against yourself. And that's the root cause of the problem. And that's something that's not going to be fixed. Those are lifestyle things. And those are things you can help the patients with, right? You're working with them as far as the diet and trying to figure out. And sometimes we don't have time for that in the clinic. Maybe we're, seeing patients in a quicker time, and they need somebody like yourself to come in and sit with them and really go through every little bit of their lifestyle and their diet and make a meal plan for them. A lot of times they don't know. And even if we tell them, it's just like, well, don't eat this. And they don't know, well, what can I replace it with? And that's where somebody
Exactly.
like yourself might come in and be able to actually help them figure out, okay, well, eat this and this instead. And patients love that, depending on the patient. For some patients, it might be very simple. And some patients come in and they're actually already like better diets than we have. And they still have these problems, right? So, and just because their diet is good doesn't always mean it's good for them.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
It might be causing, because we were all different. So I don't subscribe to the whole eating for your blood type or this, because we are all different. There is no common factor or traits.
Mm.
And I could talk a little bit about how we do the Eastern medicine diagnosis. That's kind of how we break it down. It's a very different model from the Western medicine, but there is no one size fits all. And that's one of the failures of pharmaceuticals. And that's one of the biggest failures of people practicing herbal medicine that don't really know what they're doing or kind of gave up the traditional Eastern diagnosis, and they're using herbs in the same way that allopathic Western medicine would do it, where you have this symptom, I'm going to give you this herbs.
Yes.
That's the exact opposite of how we usually use herbs. We kind of look for the patient's constitution, their body type, and other underlying things. We look for a pattern that's set, and the two of us may have the exact same symptom. Let's say you have headaches and I have headaches. The condition or the cause of it could be complete opposite spectrums. And if you take the herbs for my headaches, it might make your headaches worse.
Mm.
And that commonly can happen too. So that's why it's very important to check people out and see what kind of results they've had for their patients. And you know what, if one doctor or one practitioner doesn't work for you, find somebody else. Don't, I have people come in and they're like, oh, I tried that, it doesn't work. So I said, well, if it didn't work for you with this place, that doesn't mean it's not going to work here. We all practice a little bit differently. If you go for orthopedics, you might get 4 different diagnoses and 4 different recommendations for different types of surgeries or procedures or treatment plans as well. That's part of why it's called practicing medicine, because there is no 100%, and it varies from case to case. And sometimes people make mistakes, and sometimes it's not even a mistake. Sometimes it's just maybe something that the patient had not revealed to us about them, or some people just do not respond the way that most people do, right? Some people may have absorption issues or
Yes.
other issues, and let's say this formula should be perfect for you, it still might not work. Then we got to try to tailor our response and see where we could change it. And that's why it's important, like we were talking about earlier, working with patients long term and developing that rapport with them to let them know, hey, as your condition changes, depending on how you respond or not respond,
Yes.
we are going to change that formula, and we're going to change that prescription for you. We're going to change the diet for you, or whatever kind of medicine you're practicing, tinctures or whatever. We're going to do further lab testing to confirm the results or whatever we need.
Yes.
There's more options. It's not always, we don't always hit the nail on the head every single time the first time.
Great point. And yeah, that's why it's so personalized, and it is a journey. It's not, we can't just give you a one size fits all medication. It's personalized, it's trial and error, what's working, what isn't, and then we adjust. But because we are towards the end of our interview, real quick, before we jump off, when we look again at like autoimmune disease, and you mentioned inflammation earlier, which we know is just underlying cause of most conditions we're dealing with. Herbals are very individualized. We've just spoken about that, but are there some favorite herbs of yours that you find effective for supporting the immune system and calming that inflammation?
That is a great question. And yes and no, right? Like we talked about earlier, it does need to be tailored to some extent. Can I name some random herbs? Yeah. So like let's say you have issues with not so much autoimmune, but if you're having issues like where you get sick very often, you're very susceptible to like upper respiratory conditions. Astragalus is a very common herb, can actually raise your white blood cells, can raise your immunity. From my Eastern medicine side, it helps boost your spleen and your lung qi, which is your first line of defense against upper respiratory. And there is a ton of research on it. There's so much research on it. You still need to find a good quality source if you're taking it. And I still don't know that I'd recommend people just take random stuff. So this is not medical advice right now. I'm just throwing out some examples. One of my favorite herbs is very, very simple. A lot of us use it every day. Ginger, right? Ginger can help improve digestion. It can help remove phlegm and mucus from the body. It can help warm up and counteract some of the bad habits that we have with diet, such as eating too many cold foods, which is a big thing in Eastern medicine, which might work for some people. But we have often patients come in and they're like, oh, well, I had a smoothie for breakfast and a salad for lunch and sushi for dinner. I'm eating so healthy. Why do I have all these problems? Because that is not working for you, right? And that's why, like, for instance, if you were to get sushi, right, what comes with the sushi? Wasabi and ginger, right? To not only mitigate the toxicity from possible seafood toxins, but also to balance the yin and the yang, right? You're having this cold, damp food. So then we're going to give you these warm herbs with it to balance out the meal. So a lot of times, and it's very easy to take ginger root and make tea with it. So it is very effective. It is not considered a strong herb, depending on how you administer it. Like if you look at the pan-fried or the powdered ginger, it's much stronger than fresh ginger. Okay, so there's different ways to prepare it depending on the strength that you want it. But it's also mild enough where you can take it long-term without doing any damage. However, on the flip side of the spectrum, if you're the type of person that's already got maybe really bad acid reflux, ginger may or may not help. It may make it worse, right? So, and that's where knowing your body, paying attention to the reactions, and also working with somebody qualified is the most important part. But yeah, for autoimmune diseases, I've reversed rheumatoid arthritis for people. I've reversed Crohn's for people, and I have video testimonies from patients. I've had people come off of infusions and medications after years and years of taking them, getting worse and worse, side effects, just destroying their bodies. And, the drugs that they use to treat those two diseases in particular is basically chemotherapy is what they're giving people. What the conventional medicine way of attacking most autoimmune diseases is to kill your immune system. And they use drugs like methotrexate. Right. And they use drugs like methotrexate. It's very commonly used, which is a chemotherapy agent to kill your immune system. Does it help? Sometimes. Does it address the root cause? No. And once you're on it, you can never get off it. And the side effects are quite harsh. So that's why some people will prefer the herbs. And between the lifestyle changes that someone like yourself recommend, and maybe some supplements, and then with the herbal formula, I've seen a lot of these conditions reverse 100%. And people who had years and years of pain are completely off drugs and living pain-free, and the inflammation is not a problem. They may have to make dietary changes and lifestyle changes. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just an herb or two, or one formula fixes maybe, issue that they've had with their menstrual cycle for years and years and years.
Okay, fantastic. I love ginger, absolutely love ginger. It's one of those foods I also had to be cautious of for a while, because there was a lot of sort of heat in my body already when I was looking at my health from a Eastern perspective. So it's fascinating. We're going to have you back on the show and do another talk on how we can look at the Eastern approach to medications and things as well. But it was fascinating to learn about the different properties of these foods, what's a warming food and a cold food and that sort of thing. And I agree with you, ginger is one of my absolute favorites. I eat it every single day in one way or another. Dr. Jonathan, it's been amazing to have you on the show. We are out of time. And lastly, before we end off, I've got one question for you that's going out to all the experts. And that is, if you could turn back the clock, what is one piece of health-related advice you would give your 20-year-old self?
Ooh, that's a great question. One is a hard one because there's quite a few, and between 20 to my early 30s, I'm in my early 40s now. I actually hit a big snag in my early 30s where I had a whole health crisis. I think one of them would be to not overtrain as far as my martial arts training and stuff like that, because I think you don't realize, we always think like more is better. Sometimes it's not. And some other ones would basically maybe start actual supplementation, get good quality vitamins and supplements earlier on. I think that would help avoid some of my pitfalls. And those are the two main things. I could go on and on all day about it, but I would say is be more conscious of my body and recovery time, right? And proper nutrition. I had tried to go vegan a couple of times. That was incredibly unhealthy for me as well. And that's where maybe and I was taking some supplementation, but maybe having further knowledge of that would have helped. But you got to, and that goes back to listening to your body. So that's probably the most important. The question is, even if we are listening and we're aware, what do we do about it?
Yeah.
So, and that's, and maybe if I had to sum it up, is maybe seek professional advice in my younger years rather than waiting till problems compounded so bad where I needed to seek actual professional medical attention and start seeing all these doctors and specialists that didn't end up helping me anyway. So I would have told people, hey, as soon as you start feeling off at all, and especially I think men are probably much more stubborn than the women, is start getting help from people like yourself or my mentors. When you at the first signs of a problem, don't wait until the volcano erupts to clear out.
Yes, listen to your body, exactly, from those early signs. Otherwise, it just escalates to a point that was completely unnecessary. Dr. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. There is a link below this interview for you to access a free gift from Dr. Jonathan. I appreciate your generosity in time and your offer. That is fantastic. And I look forward to having you back on the show with us again next year. You become a regular on all these events.
It's my pleasure. This is so much fun, and I really do value all the great work that you're doing, and I hope you get to help many, many more people and expose many more new people to this kind of medicine. So bless you for the good work that you're doing, and I'm looking forward to seeing you back in Florida, and good luck with the rest of the summit. Really appreciate you, and to everybody else, be safe out there, and if you need any help, reach out to Stephanie or any of the other wonderful guests on the show, or myself, and I'm sure somebody will be able to help you with just about any type of case that you have.
Amazing. Thank you for the kind words. Many blessings for you.
Take care.
Hey, Steph here. Before you rush off to the next interview, I wanted to remind you that you are still able to upgrade your ticket to our premium package. When you upgrade, not only do you get lifetime access to this entire event to rewatch, re-listen, and relearn all the incredible expert healing advice that you've received, but you also get instant access to my Healthy Living Blueprint online course, where I walk you step by step through implementing many of the tools and strategies that we've been discussing through this event. Honestly, it has never been easier or more fun to make lifestyle changes and start healing your body. So do not miss out on this offer. It has been heavily discounted for summit attendees, and the price will increase shortly. So make sure you get your hands on your VIP upgrade before it is too late. Not only are you getting lifetime access to the entire event and instant access to my online course, but you will also be receiving a one-on-one private call with me where I can personally help you to create your Healthy Living Blueprint action plan. On top of that, you will also receive a copy of my Help Me Heal Anti-Inflammatory Recipe book and a copy of my ebook called Genes, Greens, and Routines, where you will learn how to overcome digestive disorders, get rid of bloating and food sensitivities, and increase your energy naturally. Guys, this entire package has been heavily discounted for summit attendees. So I would hate for you to miss out on this opportunity. So click on the page below. You will see an Upgrade Me Now button. Click on that and get access immediately. I cannot wait to jump on a call with you and start creating your Healthy Living Blueprint action plan.